Out in the icy North Atlantic, where waves tower like steel walls and one wrong move can cost you your life, one creature is quietly exploding the U.S. economy and at the same time turning the ocean food chain upside down. That creature is the American lobster, a species that used to be so cheap it was literally prison food, is now pumping more than $500 million a year into the economy. Every trap that comes up is packed solid red. Processing plants run 24/7, and coastal towns are living their best life again. But the more money washes ashore, the weirder signals the ocean keeps sending. Is this a gift from the sea, or a warning we don't want to face? What happens when one species suddenly becomes too much? Lobsters aren't invaders. They've been hanging out in the Atlantic for hundreds of thousands of years, hiding under rocky ledges from Maine all the way up to Canada. But in just the last few decades, their numbers have shot up so fast, scientists don't even call it growth anymore. They call it an outright boom. Believe it or not, a rise of just 1 to 3 degrees Celsius is enough to flip an entire ecosystem. Waters that used to be too cold for lobsters are now prime real estate. At the same time, their natural predators, cod, haddock, monkfish, have crashed because of overfishing. The animals that used to keep baby lobsters in check have basically vanished from huge areas. Nothing stepped in to fill that gap, so lobsters took over. In Maine, lobster landings have jumped 4 to 6 times higher than they were in the 1980s. Rocky bottoms that used to have a few scattered bugs are now full-blown lobster cities. Fishermen call it the gold rush, because on a good season, even a small crew can clear $100,000, $250,000. Money a lot of other American fishing jobs can only dream about these days. But not everyone's celebrating. In the labs, ecologists look at the same numbers and come to the opposite conclusion. When one species skyrockets like this, the ecosystem is shifting in ways that aren't stable. Two worlds, fishermen and scientists, are staring at the same phenomenon, but seeing two completely different futures. One built on endless lobster riches, and one that could collapse with the smallest nudge. So, are you ready to step into one of the riskiest industries in America? Heading out to catch lobster isn't some relaxing day on gentle waves. It's a full-on race against the ocean where any mistake can kill you. Long before sunrise, the Maine coast is already roaring with diesel engines, cables scraping steel, and the heavy creak of 100-pound traps getting stacked on deck. Each trap is a steel cage, dozens of feet of rope, a buoy, and a potential death machine that can drag you to the bottom before you can scream. Lobster boats run 20, 30, sometimes 50 miles offshore into some of the harshest waters in the North Atlantic. Waves can jump to 13 to 20 feet out of nowhere, and a storm can spin up in 20-30 minutes. Water temperatures stay between 46 to 54 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to lock up your muscles and give you maybe minutes if you go overboard. Extreme? Yeah. It's still one of the deadliest jobs in American fisheries. And the scariest part isn't even the storms. It's the trap lines. Those thick, heavy ropes are always under tension from currents and buoys. When the boat's pitching in big seas, one slip or one loose coil can wrap around your leg or arm in half a second. Once it cinches tight, you're not getting out. You're gone, yanked overboard with 80 to 100 pounds of trap on the end of the line, straight to the bottom like a rock. Nobody has time to jump in. Nobody has time to cut the line. Yet every single morning, thousands of boats still leave the dock, because the payoff is just too big to walk away from. On a good day, one trap can hold 20 to 30 pounds of lobster. At $8 to $12 a pound, a small boat can make a few thousand before lunch. That's money most other U.S. fisheries haven't seen in years. But it's not just about cash. For a lot of Maine families, this is 3-4 generations deep. Sons fish with their dads who fished with their grandfathers. Calloused hands, crow's feet carved by salt wind. That's the badge of a life on the water. They know exactly what it costs for every pound of bright red lobster on your plate. Sweat, blood, and sometimes lives. Would you think it's worth risking your life for a $250,000 season? Drop a 9 in the comments if you think it is. When the boat finally reaches the grounds, the captain throttles down, the winch growls, and the whole boat holds its breath. A string of traps heavier than a chunk of seabed comes grinding up. Lines so tight they look ready to snap. Soaked steel cages slam against the rail with a dull thud. When the door flips open, lobsters come exploding out, dark red claws swinging in the cold air like they're still ready to fight. To the crew, that's the sound of a banner year. To the ocean, it's just the beginning of a much bigger story. Are you still watching this video? To understand why those traps are always stuffed, we have to look deeper, through an ecological lens. Truth is, lobsters aren't invasive, but their growth over the past 40 years looks exactly like an invasion. Since the 1980s, surface water temps in the Atlantic have climbed 1 to 3 degrees Celsius. American lobsters do best in water between 54 and 64 degrees Fahrenheit. And for the past couple of decades, coastal Maine has been almost perfect. Places that used to be too cold for babies to survive winter, now they're rolling out the red carpet. And that's not all. The predators that kept them in check, cod, haddock, monkfish, are ghosts in a lot of areas. Atlantic cod used to be so thick you could practically scoop them up with a bucket. After a century of overfishing, some stocks are down to 1 to 3% of historic levels. When the top predators disappear, they leave a vacuum. Lobsters, tough, aggressive, always hungry, moved right in and took every inch. They grow faster, breed more, and almost nothing can stop them. When an ecosystem loses its apex predators, the level below explodes. That's exactly what's happening. In Maine, Landings are 4 to 6 times higher than 2 generations ago. Spots that used to give you 2 to 3 pounds per trap now deliver 15 to 20. Economists are stunned. Ecologists are chilled. Explosive growth is almost never sustainable.
Best haul of the season, boys.
While fishermen celebrate record checks, the warnings keep piling up. Scallops declining, clam beds shrinking, sea urchins disappearing, everything on the lobster menu. A few heavy years and dense clam flats get wiped clean. Urchin barrens turn into bare rock. Scientists call this the early stage of a total takeover. That's the dark side of the $500 million a year. Direct landings and processing, not counting tourism, restaurants, and spin-offs. 500 million sounds like the ultimate American success story. To the ocean, it might just be shiny paint over an ecosystem sliding off the rails. History shows when one species gets too dominant, there are only two endings: total domination, or sudden collapse that drags everything else down with it. Back at the dock in freezing Maine ports, the second race begins. One with no wind or waves, but an enemy scarier than any storm: the clock. Steel totes full of lobsters get swung ashore. Seawater streams across the concrete, mixing with the clang of metal, every minute worth real money. Buyers line up like gold assayers, sliding stainless gauges over every carapace. If the lobster is outside the 3.25 to 5-inch size range, or if it has just shed its shell, the value of the whole load can drop fast. Egg-bearing females and V-notched tails get tossed back, strict rules that have kept Maine's fishery alive for over 150 years without crashing. From the dock, live lobsters go straight to the plant. Conveyor belts never stop. Gloved hands flip thousands of bugs in seconds. Shell, claws, body. Rejects one way, keepers into aerated saltwater tanks. Then the pressure cookers. Giant steel pots slam shut. Steam blasts. And in minutes, everything turns that perfect market red. Next stop, picking. Knives flash. Tail meat slides out snow white. One wrong twist, one slow second, and the meat tears, value gone. That's why it's still done by hand. No robot can match decades of muscle memory. Prime meat hits blast freezers at 40 degrees Celsius to lock in freshness. Trays roll through, stacked, boxed, sealed. Reefer containers yawn open at 0 degrees Celsius. Cartons loaded neat, doors sealed. In a few hours, that load is on its way to Japan, China, Korea, Europe, or fancy steakhouses in New York and Miami. The whole thing has to happen within 72 golden hours of leaving the bottom. It's one giant living machine. Boats, live trucks, plants, reefers, container ships. Break one link, a freezer dies, a container's late, temp spikes, and tens of thousands of dollars vanish. But behind all the noise, most people don't see the bigger story hiding under that red shell. The story of an ocean trying to keep its balance. The lobster boom is shining a spotlight on something scarier. The Atlantic food web is broken. Atlantic cod used to rule these waters, eating young lobsters and keeping the bottom in check. When cod collapsed from overfishing, lobsters lost their main predator. Predator gone, prey explodes, no breaks. Great for anyone making a living on lobster. Until you realize when one link breaks, everything downstream wobbles.
The removal of the Atlantic cod creates this imbalance. Predator gone, as you can see, instability begins.
In a lot of places, fishermen are noticing the bottom looks weirdly empty. Diverse communities are gone. It's mostly lobsters and algae now. A complex underwater forest turned into a monoculture field, fragile and hard to fix. Lobsters can even mess themselves up. When densities get crazy, they fight over dens, food, and cannibalize the weak. More wounds, more disease chances. In recent years, shell disease has spiked in warmer southern New England waters. It doesn't kill them outright, but it uglies up the shell and tanks market value. Suddenly, the industry's new risk isn't running out of lobsters. It's having too many that nobody wants to buy. In some quiet lab, someone finally says the sentence nobody wants to hear. Lobsters aren't invading us. They're just filling the hole we made. While Maine rides its lobster golden age, another wave is creeping north underneath. Climate change. Lobsters don't love hot water. They do best 54 to 64 degrees. Push past 68 degrees and they get stressed. Slower growth, more movement, higher disease, lower survival. Southern New England, especially Long Island Sound, learned that the hard way. In the 1990s, it was a solid lobster ground. By the 2000s, longer summers and a few extra degrees wiped them out. Traps came up empty not because fishermen took too many, but because the water got too warm to live in. Now the same thing is sliding north. Maine is still in the sweet spot, but the trend is undeniable. The water's warming. The Gulf of Maine is one of the fastest warming bodies of water on the planet. Some years multiple times the global average. If it keeps going, just a few more degrees, and lobsters will have to move. They'll leave Maine the same way they left Long Island Sound, heading northeast into colder Canadian water. Models say if warming continues at the current pace, Maine lobster landings could tank in the coming decades. For a state whose commercial fishing economy basically runs on lobster, that's not just worrying, it could gut entire coastal communities. Meanwhile, Canada is stepping into the boom. Nova Scotia and Newfoundland are seeing the same explosion Maine had 20 years ago. Maine's dream industry might literally be migrating across the border, following temperature, not politics. For the fishermen, it's a gut punch. They're used to full traps, lobsters crawling across the deck. seasons that feed whole towns. Nobody says it out loud on the boat, but everyone knows. If the water gets too warm, the lobsters leave, and nothing we do can make them stay. Climate change doesn't hit like a storm. It creeps, steady and quiet, but strong enough to push an entire industry out of the place it calls home. As the last boat ties up and the traps cool in neat rows like metal skeletons in the wind, one question still hangs over the cold water. Is this multi-hundred-million-dollar lobster boom saving New England's coast, or is it the warning shot of something else? On the surface, everything looks golden. Traps bursting, plants running around the clock, coastal towns alive again off that red ocean money. To the fisherman, lobster isn't just a paycheck. It's proof the sea still wants to feed us. Look a little deeper and the picture changes fast. The food web is out of whack. Predators are gone. Whole bottom communities have vanished from surveys. An ecosystem that used to be as rich as an underwater rainforest now hangs on basically one species, and that's always dangerous. Nobody knows the future for sure. If the water keeps warming, lobsters walk north to Canada. If predators ever rebound, lobster numbers could crash overnight. If a new disease rips through those chitin shells, the whole fishery could collapse in a single season. Anything else possible? Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you catch the next chapter of what's really happening out there. In the end, the real question isn't, are lobsters making us rich? It's this. Are we reading the ocean's signals right? Or are we just staring at today's paycheck and forgetting the sea always has another chapter? And sometimes that chapter isn't gentle.